Why?
No, whites and blacks cannot get along. This is nature. It's getting worse every day. The latest government fact-finding committee just said that things are becoming to be separate. Just two societies, black and white. That's what we've been telling you, separation. Now the government admits that that's coming. White women have got gun clubs all over the country. Learn how to shoot at black targets. Understand that they can guns that'll shoot through brick walls just to get Negroes.
With this video, I'm going to explain in detail with facts and logic the position behind Black Lives Matter of Australia and explaining what is the argument of defund the police. I'll be touching upon some heavy stuff here, police violence, indigenous deaths within custody, and a whole bunch of other shit. Just a heads up, I'm not black. This video by no means is me speaking on behalf of indigenous and black people. I'm just here to explain the facts and give my own commentary and take on what's going on in Australia and around the world, offering some solutions that have been suggested by actual academics. I'm here to regurgitate the information and give my own take on the Black Lives Matter movement within Australia. Part 1. Coppers, are they bad? Maybe. Indigenous Aussies are disproportionately less likely to be employed, especially within leadership and management positions. Despite only making up 3% of the country's population, Indigenous people make up 29% of prisoners in Australia. And before some dipshit Nazi, race realists, or conservative comments with their racist horse piss, it's not because they're inherently more prone to violence or transcendently lesser humans. It's not about skull circumferences and skull bumps making their IQ not as good as the glorious white Australians. It's because of the impact of historical policies, systemic racism, and the utterly horrible abuse Aboriginal people had to endure for more than 200 years. For Christ's sake, the stolen generation was happening up until the late 90s. Google it if you want to ruin your evening. Analysis from Change the Record, an Aboriginal-led justice coalition, found that there has been 449 Indigenous deaths in custody between 1980 and 2011, which represents 24% of all deaths in custody over that period. That's 432 deaths in custody since 1991 in Australia, which is an alarming figure to say the least. As of making this video, no officer has been brought to justice or convicted. And we're only talking about deaths in custody here. We're not talking about police officers using their power to abuse Indigenous people. Alright, let's talk about incarceration in Australia. ABS analysis shows the shocking difference between rates of imprisonment in Australia between Indigenous people and the totals for all Australians. The rates of per adult population shows that in 2020, 4.7% of Indigenous men were incarcerated compared to 0% of all men. For the population as a whole, those numbers are 2.6% of Indigenous people and 0.2% of all people. That's a lot of numbers, okay? I'm sorry I hit you with a lot of numbers straight up. I know, that's a lot of numbers.
Keep hearing the fucking numbers!
It's a broadcast, Mason. The broadcast.
The numbers! In short, Indigenous people are more likely to be incarcerated than the population as a whole. That's enough facts and logic. You don't need a fucking spreadsheet to tell you that native Aussies have been getting the short end of the stick within Australian society. The point I'm arduously making is within the Australian judicial system and Australian form of democratic governance, there is a clear racial disparity that needs to be addressed. You don't need to be a fucking rocket scientist to know Indigenous Aussies are being fucked over by the system.
Hello, fellow Antifa super soldier. This is what mainstream radicalized feminism has done to the white man. No reaction, Adam. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to record this for YouTube. What the fuck are you doing?
Part 2. Take the money. The idea of radically scaling back police budgets and spending it somewhere else on crime prevention, rehabilitation, and social outreach has long been dismissed by most retarded liberal politicians as a fantasy of the radical far left. Speaking as a radical Antifa, super soldier, cultural Marxist, yup, fuck you. That's me. I'm a radical Antifa, super soldier, cultural Marxist. Big scary buzzwords. I'm personally paid by Jeff Bezos to make my videos and, spread anti-white propaganda. Anyway, So where do you begin untangling this spicy topic? Well, for starters, in Australia, police forces are heavily centralised. Police forces here are organised and run by the federal, state and territory governments. So what exactly is defund the police? We've heard it a lot, people have been chanting it for the past couple of months. So what is defund the police? Well, as Jack Pudgeles from Political Sciences Union College eloquently put it,
defunding the police doesn't mean getting rid of all police funding. It means redistributing resources to better serve the public. For example, allocating some money spent on policing to mental health services, community centers, and urban housing programs would likely reduce the need for officers to respond to certain calls in the first place. Sometimes, the introduction of a police officer and his weapon escalates the situation, even to the point of provoking a shooting and a civilian death that would otherwise have been avoided. Letting mental health professionals and social workers respond to non-violent disturbances would dramatically improve community relations and policing, which could then be focused on the problems that it handles best. Defunding the police doesn't mean getting rid of all police funding. It means redistributing resources to better serve the public. For example, allocating some money spent on policing to mental health services, community centers, and urban housing programs would likely reduce the need for officers to respond to certain calls in the first place. Sometimes the introduction of a police officer and his weapon escalates the situation, even to the point of provoking a shooting and a civilian death that would otherwise have been avoided. Letting mental health professionals and social workers respond to non-violent disturbances would dramatically improve community relations and policing, which could then be focused on the problems that it handles best.
imagine, for example, someone in your life or a friend, family member is suffering from a severe mental crisis. In a situation like that, most people call 000 for help. In such situations, what is required is a team of emergency response mental health professionals, not the police to show up with guns and just make the situation worse. Let me introduce you to the academic concept of justice reinvestment. Here's my friend Hanky to tell you what it is.
Justice reinvestment is the strategy to reduce the number of people in prisons through early intervention, prevention, diversionary, and other community development programs. Proponents advocate diverting money from the justice system and reinvesting it into these initiatives.
Justice reinvestment is quite a new concept in Australia. Let me expand upon it here and give you some examples. Currently in the land of the Wombat, Indigenous communities are struggling with high levels of policing, low levels of infrastructure support, sporadic service deliveries, particularly in more rural and remote communities. What justice reinvestment does is it prioritizes community control over decision making, which coalesces with Indigenous demands and self-determination. There are currently community-based justice reinvestment projects in New South Wales, Queensland, Western Australia, South Australia, and the Northern Territory. The Maraguka Justice Reinvestment Project in Bourke, New South Wales. Man, I really fucked up that pronunciation. Basically, this program introduced a Bourke Tribal Council into the community. This was done to limit the amount of contact members of the community had with the police, and hence so they could reduce the numbers of local incarceration. The Tirapandi Widali Justice Reinvestment Project in Port Adelaide, for instance, focuses on ways to support families with school-aged children to improve well-being at the home. It also offers drug and alcohol programs and post-prison release support to help people reconnect with the community and family. The Ola Dude, man, I fucking hate the name of these are so hard to pronounce. The Ola Bud Durajefa Project in the Kimberleys. In the Kimberleys focus. Fucking hell! The Oladad Dugaroo project in Kimberleys focuses on programs for young people in Hall Creek and 6 remote Aboriginal communities in the Shire, including suicide prevention, youth safety, alternate education, and mentoring. Basically, to sum up this, I'm so fucking sorry for the pronunciation for these programs here. I really fucked it up on that one. Basically, to sum up this whole part, in Australia, there has been great progress in the criminal justice system, but it is still somewhat lacking. Moving funds away from police towards these justice reinvestment programs, in my opinion, is surely a way to go in the future in addressing the issues Indigenous communities face and to combat systemic racism. We don't need more money from Scotty the Simp to fund the police and buy them new guns. That is so stupid and doesn't help anyone. That's just gonna make things so much worse.
Okay, there's only one problem. Okay, empathy is actually kind of bad for politics. The reason that empathy is bad for politics is because it leads you to empathize with people that you are more likely to like, as opposed to people you don't like.
If I can put it in really plain English, Mr. Morrison needs to make sure that he doesn't look like he's just a simp to Donald Trump on this very important issue.
Just explain simp.
No, soft.
Part 3. What? A while back, I went to the Black Lives Matter protest in my home city. I don't really want to dox myself here, so I'm not going to say exactly which state or which city, but you can probably guess. But anyway, to say the least, I probably live in the widest city, in the widest part, in the widest suburb of Australia. It's really interesting to say the least. I consider myself a big proponent of freedom of speech. It's something that's quite important to me. You know, I wouldn't be able to do what I do without free speech. It's quite emotionally compelling to hear the voices of Aboriginal and Black people that were shared at the protest. It was quite moving. I really got the feeling that we need to do better. From the government level to the federal level to the personal level. The death of George Floyd has sparked a global discussion of race and racism. I personally think it's something that needs to be carried on and seriously discussed. The powder keg has gone off and it is scary. We can't keep ignoring shit like this because the result is, because if we do, the consequences are what is happening currently. If you take anything away from this video, don't fucking listen to me. Go listen to an actual Black Australian or Indigenous Australian. They definitely have a more nuanced take than what I do. I'm not Black, I'm not Aboriginal, I don't have skin in the game here. This shit doesn't affect me. I have my own shit to deal with. But just because it doesn't affect me, it doesn't mean I can't give a shit about these issues and voice my opinion. Injustice is injustice. I'm just here to say the obvious. You know, don't be racist and Black Lives Matter. I'm here to learn and listen and basically talk shit. While I think Australia is much better than that burning shithole known as America, I mean... Fellas. Imagine if America was a real country and people actually wanted to live there. I hate Americans. The problem with Australia I have is that we have a massive problem of dismissing these types of issues. I've seen a lot of people trying to dismiss this sort of stuff. I mean, the degenerate right here is nothing new. You know, Ben Shapiro.
Okay, empathy is actually kind of bad for politics. This
motherfucker went to Harvard University. Maybe the Jewish question is real. Get it? Israel? I'm so fucking funny. That is a terrible joke. Right-wing intellectuals have a huge history of trying to delegitimize and dismiss the struggles of Black and brown people. That's nothing new. But what worries me is, in Australia at least, I've seen and heard well-meaning centrist and left-leaning people parroting the same NPC talking points. I feel like something that encompasses and culminated this position and problem perfectly was Australia's resident dickhead, Scott Morrison, with his lovely comment about Black Lives Matter in Australia, and it is fucking hilarious. If you don't know, Scott Morrison went on the record and said there was no slavery in Australia.
My forefather and foremothers were on the first and second fleets. It was a pretty brutal place, but there was no slavery in Australia.
Absolute stupid cunt. But who am I to correct you? I'm just a guy with a basic high school education about Australian history. What would I know about this fucking country? I joke, but I bring this up for a reason. We, as Aussies, are so ignorant of our own history. We act as if this country is so enlightened and it's not good to import issues from other countries. Racism isn't mutually exclusive to the Yankees, alright? It's not mutually exclusive to America, even though they're probably the biggest perpetrators of racism in all of history. But anyway, that's just my opinion. I hate Americans. Even if Americans are a disgusting bunch of degenerate human beings, fuck you, America. I feel like Australia has a big problem of looking to other countries and saying, that's arguably so much worse, thank God we're not like that. If you don't believe me, here are some examples. BLM will try and march, inevitable part of their saving the world delusion and serve victimhood complex. New South Wales police stop the kettling, tear gas, arrests, big fines and cell time at Glad ZB and Australian. Australia is not US of A. How absurd! Black Lives Matter movement in Australia is a joke because we don't have the same issues, just creating more victim. A Luther shocking take from trashnews.com. Good article. So protests were anti-white. So the protests were about anti-white and / police. The Black Lives Matter protest was actually an anti-white protest. Of course. I didn't realize. I was there the whole time and I should have known. Most Aborigines get killed, maimed, injured by other Aborigines. That's their greatest danger, not the police who are trying to help difficult circumstances and often underdress. Anyway, Mayo side 2020, kill all whites. I'm obviously joking, but there are people who unironically think left-wing people want to kill all whites. And hey man, I do. That's true. I want to kill all white people. # white genocide. Hey mate, surely hey mate, I'm just using my freedom of speech to say I want to kill all white people. Like what's the big deal here? I hope no one gets offended by that comment. It's just a meme, bro. It's just a joke. If someone clips that out of context, that's going to be really bad for me.
The short explanation to that assertion is that she's a anti-white racist who's been indoctrinated with postmodern Marxist race guilt, so much so that she's so consumed with hating on Whitey, even though she's one herself.
I'm joking around and I'm talking shit, but this is serious. I just want to end this video by saying to the handful of reactionary cunts that are inevitably going to find this video, let me just say, this isn't about you. I'm not trying to speak to you, I'm not trying to convince you. At this point, if you don't see it, you never will. You can shout, scream, cry, whatever you want to do. Assert your cheap whataboutisms, all lives matter, black people, 1350, whatever you want to say, whatever pathetic shit your brain can come up with. At the end of the day, just fade into the wrong side of history and disappear forever. This isn't about you. The material conditions of our era has reached a breaking point. We have reached an impasse in our history. At this point, it's whether or not we can acknowledge the humanity within each and every one of us, or watch the world burn down around us. Whether you like it or not, we don't live in a post-racial, harmonious society. Downplaying issues and not talking about it doesn't make these sort of things go away. Everyone be safe out there. Remember, things like this aren't created in a vacuum.
I
hope you're all doing okay, no matter who you are, even if we disagree. I love you, just know that. Anyway, massive thanks to Mia Moldova for lending her very sexy voice for the quotes in this video. One of my favorite trans waifus, yes, Illy. Massive thanks to Hakim, Hanky, or I like to call him Hanky, He's probably the only Marxist-Leninist who I don't want to punch in the face. So, yeah, dude is a really smart guy, and he's really read up on theory, so check out his videos, they're really good. Yes. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and comment below. It really helps me out. Yeah. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at pixel_hipster, capital B, capital H. Massive thanks to my $10 a month sugar daddy Patreon, barely contained. And thank you to all my other patrons here. Go over to my Patreon, it's $2 a month. Basically, you get access to secret videos, secret podcasts, a bunch of unlisted stuff, and you get to ask me a question at the end of the video. I want to do this full time, and I really need money to buy new equipment because the stuff I'm using right now is terrible. Okay, on to my Patreon question. Anyway, AD asks, do you ever look to the future as something you can shape or something you can only react to? Oh, fucking hell, that's a hard one. I feel like very much the future is very malleable by the people who... I'm guessing you're talking about politics. I feel like the future is very malleable by the people who do politics and I guess activism or whatever you want to call it in the present, but a lot of what people will get riled up about is reacting to something. For example, the death of George Floyd got a lot of people to stop like turning a blind eye to like black people being shot to death in the street. So it's hard to say. It's a bit of both, I would say. It's a hard question. Good question though. Thank you. I really enjoyed that question. Anyway, that's me. I'm done. I'm gonna go and edit this video for like the next 30 hours. Bye! See you next time. Subscribe, comment,